Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a concept that is, let's be honest, as intimidating as it is powerful. The fearless moral inventory. We're going to break down what that phrase really means, why it can be so incredibly hard, and what the path forward actually looks like.
So, let's just start with a direct question. Imagine, right now, someone told you to take a truly fearless look at yourself, your actions, your real motives, all of it, with 100% honesty. What's the first thing that comes up? Is it a little bit of fear? Some resistance? Well, that's exactly what this process is designed to bring to the surface.
You know, it's interesting. This whole process isn't framed as some kind of punishment. It's actually presented as a necessary challenge, a kind of call to adventure. It's a journey inward to finally, maybe for the first time, understand the very things that are holding you back.
And here's the crucial point. This inventory isn't about just making a list of all the bad things you've ever done. Not at all. It's about digging deeper to get to the root of the problem, to identify those underlying character traits, the so-called defects, that are the real source of the struggles in your life.
Now, as you can probably imagine, most people don't exactly jump for joy at this idea. In fact, two very common but totally opposite kinds of resistance tend to show up. It helps to think of them as the two dragons guarding the gate to any real self-awareness. On one side, you've got the depressive type. This person just gets stuck in a swamp of guilt and self-loathing, completely convinced that they are uniquely, terribly flawed. Then, on the other extreme, you have the grandiose type. This person is actually offended by the idea. They'll tell you what a good person they are and how all their problems are somebody else's fault. You see how both are just different ways to avoid doing the real work?
And here's a really fascinating psychological insight into that depressive type, that wallowing in guilt. The source calls it pride in reverse. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? The belief that your flaws are so special, so uniquely terrible that they're the absolute worst, well, that's still a form of pride, isn't it? It keeps the spotlight focused squarely on you.
And for that other extreme, the self-righteous one, a whole different game is being played. For them, making up alibis has become a fine art. It was never their fault, it was always conditions or what other people did that made them act that way. They are absolute masters of self-justification.
So, with these two powerful dragons blocking the way, how does anybody ever get through? This is where a really important figure enters the picture, the sponsor, who acts as a kind of experienced guide for this whole journey.
A sponsor's job is super practical. For the depressive person, the sponsor can say, hey, listen to my story, your flaws aren't unique, and they'll freely share their own inventory. That helps normalize the whole thing. And for the grandiose person, the sponsor's job is to gently help them find that little chink in the armor of their ego, that one little spot where a bit of honesty and self-awareness can finally get in.
Okay, so once a person can get past that first wall of resistance, the inventory can start to go deeper. And this is where the real work begins, uncovering the true source of the trouble, the real enemy that's been hiding behind all the symptoms.
And it turns out, all those individual actions and missteps, they aren't the ultimate problem. According to the source, there are two deeper, more fundamental forces that are the main roadblocks to any real, lasting change.
The source frames these human failings using a list I'm pretty sure you've heard of before, the 7 deadly sins. And it is absolutely no accident which one is sitting right there at the top of the list. Pride. It's identified as the number one obstacle. It's the root of all our self-justifications. It's that little voice inside that tells us we're the exception, that we're entitled, that we're right, and everyone else is wrong. And this pride, this is what's called the basic breeder of most of our problems.
So what's the direct result of all this pride? It's fear. It's a straight line. When our prideful demands on life, our demand for security, for respect, for getting our way, when those things are threatened, the result is fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of losing what we have, fear that people won't see us the way we want to be seen. And here's such a powerful way to think about it. Fear isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's an active, destructive force. The source describes these fears as the termites that ceaselessly devour the foundations of any kind of life we try to build for ourselves. What an image, right? Okay, so if the big goal is to identify these deep-seated issues of pride and fear, how in the world do you actually do it? Let's get into the practical side of things, the actual toolkit that the source provides for this central ordeal.
The method itself is pretty straightforward, but it definitely takes real effort.
First, you survey your behavior around your most basic instincts, things like your personal relationships, your financial security, your social life. From there, you have to ask yourself some really direct, often uncomfortable questions. And then, and this is the crucial part, you have to write it all down.
And these questions, man, they are designed to cut right through our usual excuses. For relationships, you have to ask things like, where was I selfish and who did it hurt? Or, when I didn't get what I wanted, did I get vengeful? It's all about taking a really honest look at your side of the street.
The questions about security are just as sharp. They dig into whether we used dishonesty, bluffing, cheating, lying to cover up feeling like we weren't good enough, or if our ambition crossed the line and became unprincipled. It even looks at our relationship with money. Was it driven by fear, making us either waste it or hoard it?
And finally, when looking at your social conduct, how you are with other people in general, the inventory asks about our patterns of control and dependency. Were you always trying to dominate people, or were you on the other end, leaning so hard on them that a real partnership was impossible?
And the key to all of this is one word: thoroughness. Skimming the surface just isn't going to cut it. The act of actually writing it all down, of putting these uncomfortable truths on paper, is described as the very first piece of concrete proof that you are genuinely ready and willing to move forward. So, after all of that difficult, painful work, what happens? What's the reward for facing down those dragons? Well, the benefits are described as being both immediate and really, really profound.
The first thing that happens is that the pride and fear that seemed so huge and powerful are revealed to be bogeymen. They're much less terrifying once you actually look them in the eye. Out of that comes a brand new, authentic kind of confidence. And the feeling of relief, the feeling of finally stopping the run from yourself, is apparently just indescribable. But here's the thing. This isn't a one-and-done deal. It's described as the beginning of a lifetime practice. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? What would it actually mean to build a life around the practice of continuously and fearlessly facing ourselves?